Today is Monday, May 31, Memorial Day. I'm Ron Carter. I'm in New York in my little space here. Happy afternoon to wherever you are. It's 5:01 and counting in New York time. They call it Eastern Standard Time. I call it New York time. New York is always the time of everything here. How are you today? Uh, I'm happy that Gail Boyd took time to schedule me. She's got a full schedule. She told me she's booked with people who want to talk to her until the year 2035. So hopefully there'll be a language by then. Uh, one of the three questions I'm always asked during this, I call it intermission, is what have I been doing with my spare time now that I'm not making gigs at night and traveling? And I had a hard time answering that question because I kind of didn't think about what I normally do because I normally do it. So I sat down for a moment and gave some thought because I know I'd hear the question again. I wouldn't be able to slide by with a cute answer and still not answer their question. So I decided to sit down and figure out what have I been doing for this past, I call it my 15-month intermission. One of the first things I missed was that I'm not making decisions as quickly because there's no need to. Band leaders and who get all the glory and the big signs and the lights and stuff like that are thought to be kind of the guys on the gravy train and that they're not responsible for just being a band leader. That, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty far from the truth. Just to give you an example, when I'm going to work at night, I'm planning make sure I leave the house in time given the traffic jams that New York is invariably well known for. Parking my car not too far from the club to allow me not to have to change my suit when I get to the work. Planning the program during the course of the day with the band if I'm the band leader. Hoping I've called the right songs in the right order for the evening. Hopefully I'm paying attention strictly enough to all the environment around me, the drums, the piano, the horn player, in this case, the quartet, to be able to know when they need my help more often than not. How can I guide them in the fashion I think that makes them most productive? Did I bring the guys checks for the evening? Are the songs too long? What's the order of the songs? Is it the right key? Am I allowing the bartender who seemingly always insists on shaking that drink during the course of a ballad or drops a bowl on the floor during the bass solo? All these things I've had to make decisions about on the spot, and not to have that weight, not to have that responsibility is quite a unrecognizable relief that I thought that what would I do when I don't have these decisions? So what I've done, I tried to do is be productive. And in that sense, I've written several books for my little publishing company, Retrack Productions, Inc. And one of them I'm most proud of is this. It's called Chartography, Chartography. It looks like this. And as you see, the cover describes me having kind of reinvented transcriptions. I've never really pleased with them, despite having some of my bass lines transcribed, because I thought that it gave the young bass player, in this case, a false sense of what I do. I thought that most of the times that bass line, for as good as it is, it's really pretty isolated in that you just have that. I was interested to see if I could explain to people, in this case, bass players, if I could show them how the line started from, how it evolved for a period of, in this case, 5 choruses for a different location with the Miles Davis Band, Les Wayne Short as these as examples. And I took Autumn Leaves, which we all know was the first song of every night for the, as it turned out, 5.5 years of my engagement with this wonderful bunch of friends. And it shows how my baseline, in this case, evolved over five sets of concerts playing the first part of Autumn Leaves with Miles. Sometimes he would play Herbie and Tony. So you can see how everything evolved based on my select choice of notes and rhythms. That was quite a process of 3.5 or 4 months before my friends who worked with me, Dave Barron, Boots Mallison, and my office manager who does all this kind of stuff much better than I do, figure out how to make this presentation uh, not just be different, but be different and good. And I think with the help of those three people, specifically made this project one of my summer uh, awardable events. I like to think that once people who do transcriptions see this book and understand all that it does for them, in the 5 examples that I have here, they'll step back and maybe do their transcriptions the same fashion. We can't tell. Anyway, that's part of my 15-month intermission event. Uh, I've written several other books along the same kind of bass improvement kind of line, and I hope that those of you who are bass players want to take a look at it. And those who want to see what I do when I'm not playing the bass physically will be able to go to the site and see my catalog. It's just some interesting books. A nice way to think about how the bass can be notated, how what I try to do every night works out pretty well most times, and just to see my thought process when I'm not playing the bass. So having said that, one of the things I realized is that how much time I put into playing the bass when I'm not on the bandstand. As a leader, you have all these responsibilities, as I mentioned before, and I didn't realize how much time consuming and how much thought and how much effort it takes to make that work. Uh, to always make the band receptive to my thoughts, have them understand that I'm open to their conversation, to their suggestions. I will always ask them because I don't have all the answers. I'm just all I have for them is that I'm the only bass player in this band this evening. And yes, that's what I do, but I'm taking sources of information from this person, this person, this person, those 15 guys up there in the back, that. And I need their help so I can feel that I've given all I have to give to these friends who not only are my dear friends, but who hope that I will be able to bring enough nice note choices and nice rhythms to help them think a little bit differently about how they played Autumn Leaves last week or different groups. So that's part of my 16 month intermission job. The next thing I've done for those 15 months is I've kind of sat down and figured out my computer skills, which were pretty, to say low is probably an extreme comment, not very good. So I have some manuals here, some of those Macs for Dummies, which capital letters, I fit that category. I spend some time reading page to page and have my computer in front of me, and I match the words, which are fortunately an adult size font, and how the screen tells me if I got it wrong or wrong again. And so I've tried to increase my skills because I've seen that I need more than I had. And with this intermission that we've been faced with for the past 15 months has forced me to learn how to handle the Zoom program and how to cut and paste messages and how to go to Google and stuff that's pretty. I'm verbal. I know how to say the words, and I know how they fit a sentence. But I never thought I needed enough time. I would have enough time to have to learn those computer skills. Well, I have had that time, and I've taken my time to figure out how they work. Put this away out of your sight. One more time. Done. Miss Boyd told me to remind you that if you have any comments or questions you want to ask me, if you put them in the comments, and I should hit this button over here that lets me read your thoughts. So feel free to do that. And if I can answer your questions as quickly as I can, I'll answer as many as I can. Uh, okay, here's one. What was the first jazz album you purchased? Um, Record by the Modern Jazz Quartet, the MJQ on the cover, Modern Jazz Quartet. I think that's called Django. John Lewis, Percy Heath. I think Kenny Clark was the drummer at that time, and of course John Lewis. And I was just taken back by the arrangements. They were the kind of arrangements that if you played the song on your own with just a melody, it wouldn't sound the same because the arrangements that John wrote were in such an integral part of the arrangement of the song. It's kind of like Benny Golson's Whisper Not or his intro to Killer Joe. Without those two elements in those two cases, you don't know what the song is going to be. And it's amazing that they are so tied to the results that you expect to hear. So the MJQ, piano, bass, vibes, and drums, was my first introduction to really small group writing and how small group writing dictated the whole evening. In this case, once you heard the modern quartet play Django, dedicated to the late French guitar player, gypsy guitar player, you knew that this group of people had spent together, they had rehearsed, they had a plan, they had arrangements, they had a concept, and they always looked great when I finally saw them. They had suits that looked alike, the ties were matching, shirts were nice, really a nice looking group. Uh, I guess as time has gone on, groups have kind of gotten away from that look. And sometimes it looks as if they're just coming from the gymnasium for a workout to the bandstand. And that's not my approach. It certainly wasn't how John Lewis and the quartet dressed. Really immaculate. So that was my first record. That's the first time I ever heard Django played in this context. Queen's Fancy, Autumn in New York, uh, the two bass hit. Really a nice selection of songs uh, before I met any of those people. Before I met John, before I met Milt. Unfortunately, Kenny Clark was out of New York when I got to New York, and my dear friend, who I dearly continue to miss, Percy Heath. What a person. What a great, great bass player. And a real dear friend of mine, the late Percy Heath. Anyway, that group of musicians, they played like they belonged in a band. And that's kind of what I tried to do as a bass player. I wanted to go to a group, hopefully form a band at that time that will have that same kind of cohesiveness. It sounds like they belong there. And I've had enough chances as a sideman to need to adopt that attitude so that when I'm the ringer in the band, the guy who's just filling in for somebody else, I want to make it sound like I belong there. So I have to pay attention. I have to learn the library on the spot. If they send me the music, spend the time to look at it so I know what I'm walking into. So I'm prepared for their needs. I taught school up until a week ago in Manhattan School of Music, where I'm on the faculty, finished their classes. But one of the things my students asked about is how do I happen to get those? How do we work? How do I work? What does it take to be a successful sideman in New York? So I can only tell them my experiences, of course, and I explain to them that the three things that I do as a sideman in New York that I kind of make it a habit to do is number one, always be an hour early. Number two, leave my ego at home. And number three, bring an extra pair of ears so I can hear all I can hear with this panoramic of sound that's coming at me. I think if you can do those things with some skill level, you'll be able to kind of work in New York. New York has some tremendously high standards for musicians and bass players who are really what I call the quarterbacks of any group. They have extra responsibility. I try to impress my students on these elements that make it possible for them to work. Okay, here's some comments. Oh my. Here's a question. Did you ever play gut strings for an extended period? Well, when I first started playing bass, I only knew about gut strings. If there was something else I didn't know about it, and certainly could not have afforded them as a beginning bass player. Having said that, my first set of strings were actually a two set of gut called Golden Spiral, which went out of business in the early '60s. And the bottom two were Tomastic with the black windings, which were orchestral strings. And I used that setup until 1969, 1970, when I met a guitar player named Attila Zoller, who'd come to New York during one of those European Hungarian revolutions when everyone was able to leave the country and come to New York as a great guitar player. He came over with Gabor Szabo, really wonderful guitar players. In any event, Attila was working on inventing some strings, and we had done a small duo in the little club in New York at the time, and he asked me, would I give him a hand? So I said, yeah, here's my hand. I mean, what is it? He said, I need to know if you will help me work on some strings. I said, of course. I want to find how they work. Right now I play them, but I don't know how they work. So after 6 or 8 months of trial and error, he found a company named Labella Strings who was able to and willing to let us fool around with going out there and spending a day as the person who winds the strings would wind these various combinations until I thought would work. And my job was to try them out and see how close they were to the sound that we thought was acceptable. We finally found a combination that's called Labella. For me, 110L N for nylon, and it's a steel core with a wrap of the really fine silk, and the final wrapping of nylon. So I've been using that sound, that set of strings since 1969 or so, and but I did start off using strings, and I never used a full set because the A and E strings seemed so thick to me. It takes so much effort to make them work as opposed to the size and diameter of the G and D strings. Someone recommended, so I was looking for strings, and I could email to New York. Mandy's, which has since been gone for a few years. They had a great discount price, and I could afford to buy strings, have them sent to me in Rochester. I was going to school at Eastman. And I decided that was a nice combination for me. It felt great. The bass reacted to my strings and stuff. And I said, well, this is it until this changed. They were bought by another company, and the quality wasn't the same as the gut strings I was using. So I found another solution thanks to Attila Zoller. So, yes, I did use gut strings. Never a full set more than a week because I thought they were what I was looking for. And I'm happy to have found Attila, or he trusted my judgment to say yes and no when they were good and not so good. And I've been using the Bellas for over 30 years. Happy as a lark. Thank you. Um, let's see. Here's one more question. Um, do you give lessons? Right now, I'm kind of enjoying my summer off from giving lessons. I'm on the faculty in Manhattan where I have 5 students, two undergrad and 3 graduate students, which is plenty for me to do. I enjoy them. And I thank them every now and then to thank them for having me their teacher because I learn so much as I have to explain what I do, have to have patience to explain what they do, and know when to step back and have them understand that they finally make some progress, but one good lesson doesn't make a career. So yes, I do teach students, but right now I'm trying to get the summer off so I can kind of practice a little longer. Practice. Oh yes, yeah. I tell everyone when this intermission took over, it's difficult for me to have a reason to practice because I wasn't making any gigs, wasn't making any records. No one cared what I did but me. I was comfortable to not worry about the best note and the best rhythm and the best sound. I was comfortable not to have to have those concerns like this. you know. So when I got over that, and I said, "Man, look, can you get real? You're still the bass player." First, I practiced 10 minutes a day, and then I practiced 20 minutes the next 2 days, and then 25 minutes, and next. So until I got my nerve up to hear how I really sounded. Now I practice like 3 hours a week. I have some etudes I practice. I work on some scales, arpeggios, some technical things. And I may play on melodies if I can still know the melody to All the Things You Are or the songs that I used to hear all the time and play. So if I can kind of figure out those melodies, because I haven't had need to know that stuff for, oh man, going on 16 months now. So yes, I am practicing. Not enough to say I'm a really practicer, but enough to know that I need to get practicing some more. Another comment here, another question. Let's see here. Um, did you ever look at the Lydian chromatic concept? Well, I know what that is. I know George Russell very well. Uh, we became very good friends when he was teaching up at the New England Conservatory, and I was at the time on the staff. I was one of the musical directors at the Thelonious Monk Institute when he was up in Boston, sharing facilities with the school up there. So I became very friendly with him, and we talked about that because I knew that he'd made this landmark record with Eric Dolphy. And one of the big songs was all about Rosie, I think, a real tour de force of a melody with a great display of this George's Lydian concept. And I, in fact, saw the book he had done by hand when his early copies. Yes, I know what it is, and I'm not sure I could be guilty of playing it, but I understand the concept, and George explained it to me, and we did do a little plan together just so he could show me exactly what he was supposed to do, and I understood that. But I think that my way of seeing harmony and chords is different than that Lydian concept. And if I do this again with Mr. Gil Boyd, I'll give you a more explained reason why I think of my way as being really different from the Lydian harmonic concept. Okay, here's one more. Let's see. Um, yeah, and what do you think about? Let's see. That's too many words. Let's see. Um, oh, here's one. If you weren't playing the bass, what would you do? Well, I've been interested in reading for a long time, and two things that have always caught my fancy was the science fiction writers who are able to capture those images that we're able to envision in our own heads by just a set of words. That's really an amazing thing to step into it. If you step through that portal, there's that word again, another word, and step into the world of science fiction writers and concepts that they have these names that always have too many consonants and you can't pronounce them, but they have a focus, they have a view. That has always fascinated me. And if I wasn't to be a bass player, I'd probably be a pretty decent writer. The other thing that's always fascinated me has been racing cars, the design and what it goes to take to make them work. Uh, I've had a couple, and I've enjoyed them. One of my first tours with Miles Davis, my very first tour with Miles Davis, as a matter of fact, was the band was going from New York, had a gig, had a 6 weeks in California, West Coast tour, Oakland, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, and back to LA, where we ended the tour and ended by recording half of the record called Seven Steps to Heaven. Anyway, Miles wanted to take his car to California, so he had George Coleman take my bass on the plane with me when he allowed the bass to go inside the cabin. And Miles and I drove from New York to New York to Detroit, and from Detroit to St. Louis, where I met Miles's mom, a lovely person, and she told me I should shave this beard off. I look better without it. And then we had a Maserati, and Miles trusted me to drive it from New York to these 4 or 5 hours to Detroit, wherever it was. And man, you can't imagine what it's like to be in a car uh, whose speed capacity was like 200 miles an hour in 1963. And you're in the car with Miles Davis, who's so trusting he's asleep in the passenger seat. And I'm going past 60, I'm going past 70, I'm going past 80, I'm going past 90, I'm going past, so wait, enough. And man, I'm telling you, that sold me on sports cars. Of course, those guys who are really sports car drivers, they're 5'9", 5'11", real small people. So I'd have a difficult time finding a sponsor who not only would trust me to have this car that goes 220 miles an hour with very limited skills, but also plays bass. So I'm sure that I would not get that gig. In any event, that's what I would be: a race car driver or a science fiction writer. One of my painting friends named Noah Jemison, daughter, just won the MacArthur Award, I think, and she's a wonderful science fiction writer. I have to meet her someday and tell how much I've enjoyed her work. Science fiction. Well, sometimes bandstand is like that too. Let's see. Here's another question. What is it? Okay. This thing is scrolling so fast I can't keep up with it. Let's see. Um, I read that you are the have a what's going too fast. You have given you are no I have a Guinness Book of Records. Yes, yes. I have a Guinness Book record for the most recorded jazz bass player as of October 15, something like that, of 2,221 records. Yes. I'm a little embarrassed now because the number is not enough. I've done that count is almost 10 years old, and I still have a active career. So the number is probably 300 short. But yes, that's one of my claims to fame, other than being Herbie and Tony Williams' friend and Miles Davis and Wayne Shorter's bass player, is that I have the Guinness Book of Records of 2,221 records as of October 15. So let's get that out of the way. Speaking of friends, one of the questions I'm asked is, and it's difficult to answer because it's such a broad question, what was it like playing with that band? Well, what was it like? Let's see. I like to say it was like going to school every night. Herbie's skill level is just almost overwhelming. No one really sees that. He warms up different fashion, and he's playing music doesn't need to show that level of physical skill in piano. But man, he's a piano player. Tony Williams, even at that age, he was playing stuff that no one thought the drums would be involved in playing. Just really musical. Of course, Miles and Wayne had already established a direction that they were very comfortable in building on. So every night I'm going to work with these guys. And I said, well, the reason I'm here is that someone other than Miles Davis thinks that I belong here. Then my job is to prove them correct. So every night to me was like a laboratory, as my expression I'm comfortable to say. Every night it was like a bandstand. It was like a school. Miles would come in with these chemicals. They call them songs now. And we come in with our lab coats on, matching suits or tuxedos. And our job would be to make these chemicals have have a comfortable effect. I'm sure some of the bombs that they caused were a little bigger than we expected, and the dull moments were a little down from what we hoped would be. But by and large, I think we had some pretty successful experiments. And to know that you're going to work with these guys who feel that every night, every set, every chorus, it's a chance to play some wonderful music with people who love me. Multiply that times 5, and you got a great night. And multiply that great night times 5.5 years. How could it be any better than that? I miss Tony. I miss Miles. I can't believe he's what I call left the concert almost 30 years ago or so. And I'm so happy to have talked with Wayne recently. And Herbie and I have gotten together to say hello and how are you and just exchange how much we miss each other. And the love we shared and learned to understand with that group. You know, I miss those guys, Miles and Tony. Boy. One more question here. Am I looking forward to going to work? Well, an obvious answer would be yes, but I would kind of stumble on the word yes. You know, I've gotten used to only being responsible for a small amount of people, and I'm making not so earth-shaking for me decisions. I get up in the morning. I'm not worried about trying to find the best note that night at a gig. You know, I get up in the morning knowing that the Creator's allowed me another day to be a nice person to someone who clearly I recognize that needs it. And I'm very good with doing that. And if the call is for me to see more of those needy people and respond to them, I work less, I'm okay with that too. So my time is almost up. It's 5:32 according to my New York Standard Time. Thank you for your notices. I'm sorry I didn't get to answer all your questions, but if Miss Gail Boyd with her generous stuff will allow me to make notes of these comments you have written, the questions, and if my one finger typing like this doesn't take too much time, I'll try to answer them all. My love to you. Please be safe.